All right, welcome to day 3. So today we're going to be working on two main elements. Firstly, I'm not happy with how we left the landing page, and first impressions really matter. So I'm going to be tweaking a couple things. I'll explain a bit more later. Secondly, we're going to be working on the backend logic, so using N8N as previously mentioned to kind of start getting, the flow of the functionality, and so that people can start interacting with something that's exciting. So first things first, let's do the landing page. Essentially, I'm going to be adding a lifetime deal feature. How am I going to do that? Well, there's different ways of going about it, but essentially, if the user has been on the page for more than 30 seconds, I think it's a good time to suggest, hey, you seem to be interested in this. Maybe you'd like a deal. You can't say no to a deal. So essentially, the thought process is you get to offer a bargain deal, but you're also identifying who's actually excited to use your app. And if you can find the people that are excited to use your app, that means they're going to give you one really critical thing, and that is feedback, right? It's very easy when you're an entrepreneur, when you're an artist or a creative person of any kind, to have an idea of what people might like, and you build towards that, and it turns out you're going completely in the wrong direction, and you could have, pivoted early on to build something that people actually want to engage with. So that's the key. If we can validate this idea, as also is the case for the hackathon, if you can validate the idea, then people approve of that. There's value in that. So let's get started. My thought process is suggesting with Bolt that we're going to set up a timer and see how that goes. All right, so the prompt we have is I would like to add a timer so that if the user has been on the page for 30 seconds, a pop-up appears, offering a bargain, offer a lifetime deal. This should also have a countdown, right? So you create the fear of missing out, which will reach 0 on the 30th of November. And I don't know if you've noticed with these websites, sometimes they have like a very fake countdown where you arrive on the page and it's pretend to be like it's in 10 minutes. But if you just refresh your browsing cookies, then you're good to go. In my case, I'm going to be genuine with this countdown. So by the 30th, that's when I will close the doors for this lifetime deal. And if people would have been interested and they didn't sign up, sucks for them. All right, let's see what Bolt gives us here. All right, this is the pop-up that we have. So the countdown is correct, which is already really exciting that we don't have to tweak any of that. And also I'm happy with the fee. When it comes to defining how much, if you choose to do a lifetime deal, how much you want to charge, I think it's important you look at what competitors are charging and where you're at and at what you're trying to promise in some sense, but don't undersell what you're trying to provide, right? Ultimately, it is work, it is time on your end, and you want to be continuing to working on this as well. So accommodate for that. And if you just put $5 for a lifetime deal, then what you're telling to potential customers is that you're not really that confident in what it is that you're building. Next up with Bolt, we're probably going to have to set up the payment system, which is just going to help to register even more user interest and show traction, and furthermore a login authentication mechanism. So there's two different ways to create a database with Bolt, and from my understanding, each have their pros and cons. Bolt now offers a functionality where you can create a database via what they offer. They still connect to Supabase ultimately, but essentially they themselves create their own database. The advantages of this, if you will, are that Bolt knows what it's working with, has been trained, if we can call it that, to work with the proper documentation and such, and has all the permissions that it requires to modify the database accordingly. This, in my view, is really powerful for applications where you want to validate early and you just want to get the proof of concept. And in the event that you need to scale, then you can migrate this if necessary. The second way, which is the way that I'm going to be doing, is actually directly connecting it to an external Supabase database, as I've just created one. And this way I have full control. I retain the keys and such. And in the event that Bolt scaling becomes an issue or I want to migrate some data elsewhere, then at least I have my database as a complete separate application. Usually when you're working with multiple models, you kind of want to avoid putting everything in one place, because as powerful as these AI agents are, they can simultaneously instantly destroy your entire repository. And that's just frankly outside of your control, right? You're giving a lot of control when you're allowing a tool such as Bolt to manage your whole repository. And it's a really powerful thing, but it can go both ways. In a nutshell, I personally recommend setting up with the database externally, and it's a bit tricky to find. So here you want to go in settings and then database and this little sneaky button advanced. And here you can connect to an existing database And since I've already logged in with Supabase, it will identify, it sees Auto 2.0, and that's where I want to connect. We can test this by saying, hey, what database are you actually connecting to? Give me the URL. It gives me QECXX. If I check the one I've just created, that is matching, looks good to me. All right, happy with that. So now we actually start to be able to create authentication, set up authentication, and a whole bunch of other things. So we're gonna ask Bolt to do just that. All right, so before typing, hey Bolt, create, an authentication and a user management system, I'm actually interacting with Sonnet, with Claude here, to get a more comprehensive overview. Because I found with Bolt that if you really do specify precisely what it is that you want, then the chances of it getting it wrong are really, again, reduced. You're constraining those variables, you're limiting the chance, and end of story. So here it's still reminding, you're building a user registration, preferences would be ID, user ID. Yeah, so this can, okay, this might be a lot to ask Bolt, but ultimately we're here to test, we're here to experiment. So I'm just gonna copy paste in a good, vibe coding fashion. So let's see what we get here. Just like that, if I now check on Supabase, what have I got? Boom, all right, I've got a very powerful start to potentially a successful database. Obviously need to do some testing on my end, but this seems very promising. There seems to be an error here. I'm not sure what the error is, if the console is giving us anything. So remember, you can always check the console if there's any bugs that seem obvious to you. And it's just a good way to start getting an idea if you're new, when it comes to software development, to what may be happening. So I'm getting a lot of failed to load resources. This could be as well blocked by client, so this could be just because of the browser I'm using. I preferably use Brave browser, and so it blocks a lot of cookies, a lot of trackers, and ads. This is not sponsored, as always, but I can really recommend it. However, when it comes to debugging, it can be a bit frustrating. For example, I can't really give location permission access, so there's some restrictions. Bear that in mind. All right, we've got the login button. Let's test it out. Okay, and so this is where the debugging actually starts getting a bit more serious. So here you want to identify where in the client, you might have an error that's relevant to the bug you've experienced. And in this case, it's probably the last one here, Supabase request failed. It's returning an unexpected error. So I've just said this occurs when creating an account and meeting all the criteria. So letting it know that it has nothing to do with a username issue, email issue, or password, and just that I believe this may be the bug. Okay, so we've tried again, and this time Bolt has given a more comprehensive error. And we're just gonna read and repeat. So request failed. I didn't identify the correct thing, but this time we're also getting a specific worker is not defined. This time account created. Interesting. So I know for a fact it's not sent out an email because that's just not how it's going to work, and we're going to be needing to use NA10. If you remember the first video, it's relatively streamlined. The important thing, if this is the first time you're setting up SMTP, so I believe that's Server Mail Transfer Protocol, I believe, I may be mistaken, but if it's the first time you're setting it up, essentially you need to own a domain, because it's only if you own a domain that you can actually automate the process of sending out emails. Otherwise, Gmail is not going to just let you do that from your random Gmail account. Okay, I'm going to stop there when it comes to authentication for now. We've still got a few things to set up, but now I'm going to pivot to the payment system. So if people already want to, secure a lifetime deal, then you need to set up a payment system for that, obviously. Bolt supports Stripe, which is a common established tool. Okay, so here Stripe is asking me for my API key. I've just created a fresh account. We've got the publishable key. So this is what you want to be connecting it with. Essentially, boom. I believe it's the public one. I may be wrong here. A valid API key. So I guess not. I guess we have to go for the private. Close your eyes. Did you close your eyes? I'm watching you. All right. Let's see if this works. So yes, that's indeed it. You need to be using the secret key. I knew this all along. It was a test. I was just testing if you knew. So, update my products, 0 products available. Please take the Stripe products you would like to use for the application. You can also sync 0 products available. Okay, so in this regard, I think I need to be implementing Stripe products. So going on the platform and then actually importing them into AutoQuiz. So let's do that. Okay, so on my end, I've set up 3 products. One is the lifetime deal, so it's a one-time payment. 2 are subscriptions, yearly and monthly. Very simple, very straightforward. So we've got the recurring product, and now let's check out the integration. Maybe at this point, Bolt is able to check that we actually have products, and they do show up here. This is excellent. All right, I did not expect it to work first time, so let's go. So I want to be including, yeah, let's use these. Let's incorporate these. Let's see what the prompt. I want my application to accept payments for the following products. I hope you create edge functionality. All right. Okay, well, I seem to have successfully integrated Stripe, but a bit of a weird error occurred. That's fine. You know, it can't be all sunshine and rainbows. In this case, we've lost completely our UI, and I'm not even sure what type of authentication it's asking us here. So quite bizarre, but let's have a look at Bolt. After the Stripe integration that you just did, I'm seeing a weird login register page that has nothing to do with the previous UI. Can you explain what the login, what this login is? And I even gave it the div to inspect and just tell me, like, is this Stripe that's just coming in a place that it shouldn't be coming in? Is this Bolt that's just taken some creative liberties, which can happen? I'm very curious. I've never seen something like this. So as can happen in vibe coding, your app.tsx file was completely replaced during the Stripe integration. It now has a routing with different login page instead of your beautiful AutoQuiz landing page. Thank you for inflating my ego. But this is a really good example of why you want to be keeping things separate, right? Imagine you are a live product and you have just your entire database wiped because Bolt was like, oh, I wanted to sprinkle a bit of, you know, stylistic CSS on that. So you have to watch out for this, and if this doesn't show why you should be separating database, UI, etc., I don't know what will. Okay, so it seems to have restored most of the initial landing page. We have the login button. Funnily enough, it got confused by this section as well as it previously was, and it's removed as well the... All right. Yeah, so this is the reality of vibe coding, right? When you have something does not mean you will have it forever, but in this instance, Bolt offers a really convenient feature where you can just backtrack to the previous version. So this is automatic. Basically, when it comes to GitHub, it's like having a version saved or a clone version, and you can just restore that. But it makes it tricky when you're trying to make progress in some way. I'm not going to lie that you have this kind of oscillation back and forth, where you maybe get one feature that you wanted, but you lose something else in exchange, right? Like a bargain of some sorts. Okay, here's a bit of a teaser for section 2. Essentially, I took a break with the landing page. I wanted to do something a bit different and let Bolt figure its stuff out. So in this case, I've designed now more or less the flow that users will be experiencing for the backend. Okay, so what does that mean in a nutshell? Right now, you can see it looks a bit like Figma. If you're familiar with Figma, what we have here are called nodes, right? And essentially what nodes are, think of them as Lego blocks that you can stack in really, really creative ways to essentially get you to do all sorts of things, right? There are many, many, many tutorials when it comes to using N8N online, such as, you know, how to set up, connect to Google Sheets and automatically amend tables, etc. This is not one of those. I'm not going to claim that in under 5 minutes, you're going to catch all the information and understand how to be an N8N Pro. I just want to put forward an idea of something that you can do. So for example, on the front end side, soon I'm going to have, once the user is logged in, I'm going to have a system in place so that they can start a quiz, they can start a journey, start an adventure, right? And so this is going to trigger a webhook, essentially sending the relevant data to N8N. This is probably going to be the starting location so that we know where we're starting and what question we want to ask about the place that the user is starting from, and also the preferences, right? So if the user says they're interested in history or music, then you can find a contextually relevant question. So in this case, I've got the webhook sending the data. It's triggered by that. The webhook is sending the data, and this node in N8N triggers and it starts the whole workflow, right? You're seeing this entire section. The workflow is over here. So in this case, we're going to have an AI agent I've given this AI agent a prompt. You are an engaging and knowledgeable virtual tour guide, Connected it to a tool, Wikipedia. Thank the heavens for Wikipedia. Such a powerful tool. If you have the opportunity to donate for Wikipedia, donate. That's all I'm going to say. Regarding the prompt and such, I'm not going to delve too much into it. I just want to give you an idea of what the workflow looks like. So we've got the AI agent leveraging Wikipedia with some preferences maybe. For now, I'm not really importing the preferences. It's just including the starting location. So we have json.body.location. So this is data that it's receiving from the webhook, including json.body.interests. And we're passing that to the AI agent to say, hey, these are the interests that the user wants to know about. These are the locations. Work with this information. Once it does that, it's obviously connected, right? You can't just have an AI agent like that. You need to connect it to an actual model. And in this case, I've connected it to the LLM OpenAI Chat Model 1. That's just the name I gave it. It's actually GPT-4 Turbo. But as you can see, I've connected A10 to my OpenAI account, so I've got access to a whole list of different models. I'm not going to go into which is better. It really depends on your use case, right? This is where you have to be a bit creative and independent in terms of the research and do some cost-benefit analysis for your use case. All right, next up, once we have the output, so we have the text, I'm using something that OpenAI provides as well to generate audio. Very simple. It's just the JSON.output from the previous node, which is the text, the response from the initial LLM, and converting that into an MP3 format. Once we've got the MP3 format, I'm going to name that file. So just give it a name. I think for now, I've essentially made it that the name is the starting location along with I've removed interest because there was some conflict error. So the file name, saving it as a string, quiz_starting location. And then maybe a timestamp just to avoid any conflict errors. One thing I found out, and you may experience this as well, is Supabase does not like duplicates. And when it comes to automation tools, it's very easy from Bolt, from N8N to have a duplicate, even if the data itself is different. If there's a duplicate in the name, then that's going to cause a conflict error, and generally it's just bad practice. So what you're going to be doing is maybe putting a timestamp. It's an inefficient solution in the long term because you may want to sort through this in a more orderly way when it comes to having a large database. But for now, timestamp works in our use case. Afterwards, we're going to upload the audio to Supabase. In this case, the file that we've created, the database that we've created here, and then sign that. So probably encrypt and protect it. Lastly, just edit the fields. This is not relevant because I'm setting up a text and audio feature is what I'm thinking. Some people may want to be listening in the car and not actually reading what's on their phone. That's illegal in many countries. So getting the audio version of the URL. Others may be more curious to just get the text version and don't want to have the audio. So we're just leaving it as is. And lastly, responding to the webhook. And so that's going to be the complete workflow. And once it sends that webhook back to Bolt, back to AutoQuiz, then the user on their end is able to retrieve the quiz question that's relevant to the area. That was a quick overview. I know I kind of sped through it and such, but I think today's video is long enough as it is. I hope you enjoyed watching. I'm going to be consistent with these updates as well. As always, if you have any feedback, any questions, shoot me a message on Discord, shoot me a message in the comments, and I'll keep my eyes peeled. Thanks for watching again. Take care.